Now, in this edition of Let's Talk Some Star Wars, we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll that asked the question, what rating would you give The Empire Strikes Back? I'll also be reading and responding to some of your comments, as well as showing off some of the artwork and other images that people sent me this week. Not to mention, towards the end of the video, I'll highlight a couple other YouTube channels out there for you all to check out. And with that said, let's just get right to the results, where we'll see that 80% of the some 35,000 people who voted gave The Empire Strikes Back, surprise surprise, 5 stars and thought it was an amazing movie, with another 17% giving it 4 stars, which then left just 2% to give it 3 stars, 0% to give it 2 stars, and 1% to give it 1 star, though some of those people who gave it 1 actually admitted that they were trolling in the comments. And so then when we do all the math here, we end up with an average score of 4.75 stars, which puts it comfortably in the lead with just 2 movies to go, those being Return of the Jedi, the poll of which is already up and going, and then the following week it'll be time for The Last Jedi. And really, there's not a whole lot to say about these results. I'm sure they're not surprising anyone. Yes, there were certainly some comments that had some negative things to say about the film, and they weren't just trolling, and I'll try to get to some of them. There were also others that made good points about why other movies in the franchise could be considered better. But even if you're one of those fans that genuinely gave this movie 1 star, it's really hard to argue against the fact that this movie, The Empire Strikes Back, will always be the bar or standard against which all other Star Wars films to come will be judged. But before I just start sitting here talking the film up and praising it, let's get to what you all had to say. Though first, as always, thanks to those who voted and left comments on the poll. Also, a very big thank you to those who sent in artwork or other images this week. I'll try to get to as many as I can here, but if you don't see yours, please don't take it personally or anything. Didn't mean I didn't like it, just means I get a lot of submissions, which is awesome, and do please keep them coming. Anyway, let's get to the comments. Starting as usual with the top rated comment, which this week came to us from HMM, who simply said, "Everyone who gives it under 4 stars is wrong." And well, at the risk of angering the 3% of you that he's talking about, those who gave it average or below rating, looking at this as objectively as I possibly can, it's hard to see how someone wouldn't rate this at least as a good above average 4 out of 5 star movie. However, do keep in mind that in other videos in this series, I've made it clear that I left the question very vague, that I just say, how would you rate this movie, because it's really up to you to decide what criteria you're even judging these films on. So if you hate it for your own personal reasons and gave it 1 star, I can't tell you that you're wrong. As I say all the time, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, even if that opinion is that The Empire Strikes Back only deserves 1 star. I mean, your opinion is wrong in this case, but you're still entitled to it. And yes, I'm joking. Okay, so next up here we have this comment from the Spongy Mallard, who said, "Maybe an unpopular opinion, but it's my least favorite of the original trilogy. I still give it 4 stars. Then there's this comment from Kevin Yarrow, who said, "This may not be everyone's favorite Star Wars movie, but objectively, it's the best, 5 stars. And you know, I too think Empire is the best Star Wars movie, but it's not my personal favorite. Return of the Jedi always has been and always will be, in large part because I saw it in the theater when I was 5 and I can still remember that experience. Oh, and it does have one of the best endings in the history of anything ever, so there's that too, which I'm sure we'll talk about more next week." Anyway, we obviously all enjoy different things for our own reasons, and with Star Wars going on for over 40 years now, being this huge multi-generational thing, people are going to prefer certain movies over others for their own reasons again. And your age and when and what Star Wars movie you first saw and where and how, it's all going to play a part. But honestly here, it was kind of awesome to see the amount of love and respect The Empire Strikes Back and A New Hope last week got from fans of all ages. Again, it's not my personal favorite either, but in so many ways and for so many reasons, I do consider this the greatest Star Wars film. Okay, next up here we have this comment from Larry Garms, who said, "The no, I am your father moment is the ultimate subversion in all of filmmaking history. It defined the surprise twist that has rarely, and I mean rarely, ever been pulled off in a story. The amount of emotional value depicted in the short moment after such a passionate duel is just amazing. Knowing that Vader was simply toying with Luke all along, gauging his son's skills and waiting for the right moment to reveal himself, just beautiful and perfect." And yeah, I absolutely agree with that. For those of you lucky enough to remember seeing Empire back when it first came out, you had to be as shocked and as horrified as Luke to hear Vader say those now infamous words, which is a big part of the reason why it worked so well and why it's arguably the best twist in the history of film. Not only did you not see it coming, but just like Luke, you didn't want to believe it could be true. You didn't want to believe this monster could be Luke's father, especially after Ben had told him otherwise in the last movie, that Vader had betrayed and murdered Luke's father. Alright, now let's get to this comment from Al Chapo, who said, 5 stars. This is a perfect movie. This may be controversial, but I actually do prefer this special edition, as they fixed the Emperor's projection and the Wampa, the only blemishes on the otherwise perfect original. Along with Revenge of the Sith, they are at the top of my Star Wars list. And I do agree with you about the Emperor in the special edition. I don't know that too many people complain about putting Ian McDiarmid in there, for continuity's sake too, and changing that scene. The Wampa, I'm neutral on that. It was fine the old way, and it's fine the new way. Another change I did like was opening up Cloud City, or taking out some of the walls and putting in, well, cloud backgrounds, to make it look and feel more expansive. 2 changes I didn't like, though, were after the big duel with Luke, Vader now says, "Alert my Star Destroyer to prepare for my arrival," when he used to just say, in a very pissed off voice, "Bring my shuttle," and I very much prefer that old way. Also in the special edition, they had it where Luke screamed when he let himself fall after rejecting Vader's offer, but at least they took that out in the Blu-ray release, because it was just silly for him to scream like that, and it kind of took away from the moment and the decision he had just made. Okay, let's now move on to this comment from JetBlast190, who said, "Artistically and creatively, Empire Strikes Back is the best. But for overall impact, and I'm speaking from the perspective of someone who was 11 when the original Star Wars was released in 1977, before it became known as A New Hope and back when Han still shot first, speaking of special editions, I would rank Empire number 2 on the scale of influence. Without the great success of Star Wars, there wouldn't have been Empire or any of the other movies that followed. As I recall, those of us who were kids when Star Wars was released, the movie had a beginning and an ending, and the thought that there was more to the story to be told was never part of the thought process. Star Wars by itself had established high status as a standalone movie, let alone the beginning of a trilogy and an entire franchise. And this too I agree with. When it comes to influence, it's hard to touch what that first Star Wars movie accomplished. It's easily one of the most influential movies ever, maybe the most influential in regards to the way the film industry is today. And yes, it was just a standalone movie, one that doesn't too blatantly set up any kind of sequel, unlike many movies today that focus so much on what they're going to try to do next, setting up their entire franchise, that they forget it needs to start with one good movie. And it's mainly because Lucas never knew he'd be able to go back and tell more of the story, because the wild success of Star Wars was a surprise to everyone. Most of those who worked on the film had no idea what Lucas was even trying to do, what he was thinking, and they actually thought it was going to end up being a huge flop. Anyway, I'm talking about the wrong movie here. So let's get to this comment from Charlie Cook, who said, "Do you even have to ask? Empire is the greatest sequel of all time. It's one of the greatest movies of all time, with some of the most iconic moments in all of movie history. It took what George had built in Star Wars and expanded upon it perfectly. It will always be my favorite Star Wars movie." And no, I guess I didn't have to ask, though as I did say a bit ago, I was surprised at the sheer amount of respect and appreciation this movie ended up getting. And I think you're right that it was the perfect sequel, and as we all know, all too often sequels are nowhere near as good as the original. And not to take absolutely anything away from the influence of the first film, which the previous comment talked about, because yes, without Star Wars, Empire doesn't exist. But this is, in many respects, a better film in my opinion, and objectively so, and it had the luxury of knowing there would be yet another movie after it, and could hence fully embrace this idea of being the middle part of a larger 3-part story, and had the cliffhanger ending that it did. Okay, let's now move to a comment that did have some criticisms for the film, and it comes to us from Nathan M., who said, "Unpopular opinion, but this is actually my least favorite Star Wars movie. I really don't get why so many love it. A lot of the movie, especially the entirety of the asteroid field, felt like filler, and the first 25 minutes takes a while to get going. The movie isn't only full of bad moments. Dagobah and Bespin were pretty good locations, and interesting things happen there, like Luke in the cave seeing his own face in Vader's helmet, and of course the famous scene where Luke and the audience, more so in a way, learns that Darth Vader is Luke's dad, and I wish more of the movie was about those two characters. It talks about how, in the opening crawl, how Vader is obsessed with finding Luke, but other than using his friends as bait, he doesn't do much to accomplish that. Maybe it's because I grew up in a different time period, maybe I'm just a prequel baby, but I really don't see why people think this movie is so good. I don't think it's bad, but very overrated. And much like other films and other pieces of media like The Force Awakens or Paper Mario and The Thousand Year Door, my expectations were just set way too high with how much people praised it. Okay, let me first say here that I do think the movie does a good job of showing how obsessed Vader is with finding Luke. It opens with the Empire launching probe droids throughout the entire galaxy, basically looking for any sign of the rebels and hence Luke. And one of the reasons Vader focuses all his time on catching Luke's friends is he likely knows that's what Luke's weakness is, the people he cares about, just like it was Anakin or Vader's own weakness too. And he knows how effective that can be when trying to turn someone to the dark side through personal experience. No doubt the plan is to do to Luke what was done to him, essentially. I mean, why do you think he keeps altering the deal with Lando? Why do you think he wants Leia and Chewie taken to his ship? The overall plan here is to catch Luke and to turn him to the dark side by using his friends against him. All that said though, if someone told me before I watched Empire for the first time, or if I kept hearing how amazing this movie was all the time and that it's one of the best ever, that it was going to change my life after I seen it, in other words, if my expectations for it were set that high through the roof, I too might watch it for the first time and say, I don't see what the big deal is. I mean, as a kid, it was my least favorite of the three. I loved the Hoth battle and I loved the Luke Vader fight, but it wasn't until I got older that there was a lot of other things in there that I learned to appreciate, I guess you could say. Not saying you're young and will change your mind or don't understand the movie. Not saying that at all. Just that to keep with the theme of the video, I guess, and like with a lot of things in life, it's all about perspective or your own point of view. And as I said, what I think the results of this poll actually show is there are a lot of people who do truly love The Empire Strikes Back, of course. But there are a lot of other people who at least respect what it means to the overall franchise, even if they personally don't think it's the greatest film of the bunch. Alright, let me just quick fire off a few more comments before wrapping up this video, starting with this one from Tyson who said, "This movie laid the foundation for what a Star Wars movie should be. Friends, family, betrayal, and a battle between two powerful Force wielders. Almost 40 years later, and Empire still holds the title for Best Star Wars Movie and one of the best movies of all time." Then we have this comment from Micaiah Grossman who said, "Empire Strikes Back was one of the first mainstream movies to establish that the evil, all-powerful antagonist wasn't just a pushover, but a genuine threat to be reckoned with. It left the good guys in a place of defeat, but with plans to take back what they lost. One of the best hooks, but not cliffhangers, of all time. Empire Strikes Back builds on and reinforces what was established in A New Hope, and it also expands the universe and lore of its premise. Not to mention, it had one of the best twists of all time and didn't ruin it in the trailer like Terminator 2. And finally here we have this comment from Passport who said, "My favorite Star Wars film of all time. Introduced great characters such as Lando and Yoda, epic battles and music, thank you John Williams. Overall, an epic emotional roller coaster of a sequel." And since I think Passport's words here sum up the movie nicely, and always more there is to say about The Empire Strikes Back, and if I get started again, I probably won't stop. And since many people are enjoying this series and enjoyed the first part of my in-depth review of The Force Awakens, I'll be making my way through each and every one of the movies in that same format, with the next part of the Force Awakens review being up in the next few days, I hope. And I say hope because I'm kind of behind schedule thanks to D23 this past weekend, hence this video is up on Tuesday instead of Saturday or Sunday like usual. Anyway, if you're looking for something else to watch before then, let me point you in the direction of a few other channels. And since a lot of you are sending me links to your channels, videos, and so on, what I'm going to do this week is highlight a few different types, starting with Jedi Joshua's channel, a young man who shared with me some of his work to use in this video, and if you want to see how he does it, please check out his channel. Then for the collectors, there's Geekin' Out, and they do hot toy unboxings and reviews and other types of reviews as well. We also have Dark Moon Studio, which is putting together a very cool looking Lego style Star Wars fan film, and then two movie review channels for you to check out, those being Movie Core and Black Currant Studio. And if you're interested in checking out any of them, links will be found in the comments below. And finally here, if you're interested in showing off your artwork or cosplay or collection of Star Wars toys or memorabilia, or you're into action figure photography or whatever else it might be that you want to show off, please send it to me at the email address in the description below, and I'd be happy to include it in my next Let's Talk Some Star Wars video. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think of The Empire Strikes Back. Is it truly the best of the bunch, or is it overrated? You can also feel free to check out one of the other channels I mentioned just moments ago, or to go vote and comment on the poll for Return of the Jedi. Whatever it is, let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.